Hey guys, today we're doing something first. Whoa! Let's get right into it. Hi guys, how are we? Pretty alright. Another appointment today, you know? If I don't have an appointment, I just get like super tired. I don't know why. Yeah, long nap. You know, it was a good day. I'm just getting to it now. It's like 7 o'clock, so I haven't done much yet. But hey, you know, there's a thing where we say every day, what makes it hard isn't doing something, but doing it every day. And you know, I think we get a lot into the grind and how normal that is. And then you start losing certain things because of that, you know? It's almost like to grind, you take some sacrifices. Because it takes a lot of discipline to just keep it going. That's what I mean by grind. Every day to do something, whether that's, you know, forcing yourself into a discipline or easing yourself into one. You know, I think easing into something is, you know, not always possible, but definitely preferential. And something that, you know, maybe God has placed in your life that, yes, you do need to learn how to take something head on, you know, the courage it takes and the learning you get from that, the lessons. And there's also the contrary. What if you're too, you know, used to just grinding away, doing things head on, going into one thing, then doing another, that God just wants you to take a step back, you know? And where do we discern this? How do we know when and where, what lessons, how? Well, I'll tell you. So this is the second kind of video about this little chapter of ours, chapter 9 in Matthew. So let's just do one verse today. Let's see if you know. Therefore pray earnestly the Lord of the harvest to send our laborers into his harvest. Send out laborers into his harvest. Now, isn't that beautiful? Into his harvest, the harvest of the Lord, the bounty, the beautiful, you know, God's kingdom. You know, how beautiful that is, that we should send laborers out, right? We talked about laborers and how they the doers of the word, not just hearers, right? But I want to talk about what this sentence first says. Only 2 words can create like an entire sermon. And there it says, therefore pray. That was the first command given before anything, was therefore pray. Now, and you're wondering, well, William, you left us on a cliffhanger. What are we supposed to do when we're met with all this ramble, the noise, the confusion, and the impatience, the stress, it comes from either or. What you do is you first pray, making assumptions. What gets rid of that? Prayer. Feeling uneasy? What helps with that? Prayer. Because God knows, and He is the eternal covenant. Jesus Christ, who came and died for our sins, for us not to be condemned, but to be redeemed. And what did God do? He prayed. God prayed. That's a little backwards. And He came down to earth, or came to earth, down to earth, whatever you want to say. He came and He prayed. Now, he came not just as a man, but as a child. Now, I'm sure Jesus could have just been a man who nobody knew, like a nomad, came out of the wilderness and just taught. And the same things might have happened, but we know that they wouldn't have, because He came as a child. He had to learn, just like the rest of us, right? And for 30 years or so, nobody knows, it's Jesus' missing years. John Prine, funnily enough, made a song on that. It's more of a satirical song, but yeah, it's the missing years that Jesus was learning, and who taught Him to pray? Who taught Him carpentry? Who taught Him this and that? Well, who taught Him to pray? His mother, right? Let it be as it is, and then He prays in the Garden of Gethsemane, not my will, but yours be done. It's the same kind of sentence, just they're worded differently. When Mary was confronted with her own queries, same with Joseph, right? When he was confronted, an angel came down, eased him, and because he prayed, he was a man of prayer, and then as a carpenter, he taught the generational line, and then the generational line, and furthered that with Jesus, and therefore Jesus could steadfastly run His ministry as a man that people could trust, know. He has that history, and just like us, we can sympathize with Him, because what makes us human is things we can sympathize with, right? The things that, instead of the good that we can share, but that the good's all here, above the surface. When we open that, the bad intertwines, and that's what really makes humanness, right? And God, He was a perfect man, and that's why we killed Him. It seemed like He was just at the surface, right, all the time, just perfect, holy, spending this great man spending time with sinners, upturning the markets, knowing and discerning right and wrong, approving the wrong, and not approval isn't like validation or accepting everything. And it's not, acceptance isn't approval. It isn't validation. The verdict of acceptance isn't defined by acceptance. Acceptance is loving thy neighbor, right? Because the greatest commands are these: love your God, love your neighbor, and the rest will follow. So I'll put that verse there. The greatest commands are these. And with that, we can just know. And before doing anything, we think and then we do. But if we replace that think with a little more steps, pray and then do, how much more man like Jesus can we be, right? Labor like Jesus, do as Jesus did, be like Jesus. All these things that we want to do, because He's a good man, the perfect man, right? That just seems so countercultural, and that's what I was going there with, the upturning of the markets. They're using the markets in sacred places. That's wrong. He's hanging out with sinners. That sounds wrong. He's claiming to be God. That sounded wrong. He's claiming all these things, and he's like, "What, Jesus? What are you doing? You're talking to me in parables and metaphors that I don't understand." I mean, nobody really understood them back then, right? That's why you had to always explain it in such a way that's like, come on, just right. The 12 disciples that we're getting into chapter 10, and He called to Him, to His 12 disciples, and gave them authority. And authority to forgive, to cleanse unclean spirits, authority because they were the ones who He trusted. Although, how much of a gang was that? One's a tax collector, some are fishermen, just plain old fishermen. One will betray Him. Hey, God knew that, but He still chose the traitor.
And everybody else, Simon, Peter, Paul, all these, disciples, apostles, were just it seemed like a ragtag gang back then, because it's just a bunch of random guys who came together, made the gospel spread it, right? And they did a successful job, right? We know about Christianity to this day. Historians know of Jesus to this day because of martyrdom, because of these disciples, because of the apostles, because of the 500 that Jesus encountered, because of all of this that he did, right? So that's what he did. But before that, he prayed. He had to pray. And we can't go life without praying. And that's why always in decisions and feelings and emotions, things that are uncertain, things that are wavering, we can straighten out the wave by just smoothing it out with prayer, right? And then you can open up, and we've talked about that many times before. So that's all for today, but hope you enjoy, and hopefully the day goes well for you, and until then, here's to tomorrow.